Hello everyone and welcome to Anthroholic. This is Ashima Shukla, and in today's video we are going to talk about synthetic theory of evolution. Now we have in previous video already we have talked about the natural selection. We have talked about human evolution. And this video in particular is going to be about the synthetic theory, which is considered as one of the more prominent questions, you can say, in terms of UPSC examinations. There are multiple times that questions from synthetic theory of evolution, its relativism to Darwin's theory of natural selection, is asked in examination. So that makes it an important segment for the examination purpose. So before we begin, we definitely need to understand a brief idea about synthetic theory of evolution. This particular theory integrates Darwin's natural selection and the Mendelian genetics. Natural selection, you already know. Detailed video or a crisp video is already available. Mendelian genetics is how the genes are passed, the study of how the genes are passed from generation to generation. Along with that, it also incorporates the insights from the population genetics, paleontology, systematics, and molecular biology. So it explains evolution as a gradual change in gene frequencies within population over generations. So a brief idea about this can be that धीरे धीरे, slowly and gradually, as evolution happens, that is what synthetic theory of evolution explains, कि how it happens slowly and gradually, how slowly the gene frequencies change within population over generations, and that is how a new species at last is formed after multiple frequency changes of genes, right? That is what synthetic theory of evolution is. Now if we look at certain contributors, the key contributors in this theory are: one is Theodosius Dobzhansky in Genetics and the Origin of Species, Ernst Mayr, speciation and reproductive isolation, Julian Huxley, who coined the term modern synthesis, G.L. Stebbes, Sewall Wright, J.B.S. Haldane, and Ronald Fisher. These are a few contributors, the key contributors towards this theory in general. What are the factors of evolution in synthetic theory? Now, definitely when there is a theory, there is certain factor involved. First is genetic variation. Now, when we look at the genetic variation, it arises from various forms. Genetic variation ऐसे नहीं है ना कि एकदम से हो जाएगा. There is definitely certain form in which it can arise. So one is via mutation, that is gene and chromosomal mutation. While multiplying, if there's any small change in the gene that is causing mutation, or chromosomal changes that lead to mutation, that causes gene variation. Genetic recombination during the meiosis. You all know that there are two ways in which a cell divides: meiosis and mitosis. In humans it is meiosis, and if it is meiosis, that means that there are two different parts of chromosomes which combine together, right? They combine together, and when this combination leads to genetic changes, that is genetic variation. So when genes are recombining, जब दो चीजें अलग अलग मिल रही हैं, तो उस टाइम पे changes होना लाजमी है. It is possible that there are certain changes that is going to happen, and when those recombination changes happen, they lead to gene variation. And the third is gene flow, that is migration. When there is a certain change in the flow of genes. Apart from that, we have natural selection. We've already talked about natural selection as well. So the fittest, the survival of the fittest, naturally selected genes, they are passed down. Rest, they may go certain mutations as per adaptation. There's genetic drift, there's gene flow, and there is isolation mechanisms as well. Now, isolation mechanism can be geographic or reproductive isolation, both of which either it is geographic or it can be reproductive isolation. And both of these or either of these, they are going to lead to speciation, that is formation of new species. Gene flow, that is movement of genes between populations, this majorly leads to variations, the changes and variations. Genetic drift, which is the random change in frequencies, random change in alleles, that is significant in small populations, but major changes happens over time, right? Now, a certain set of questions that you can see with respect to this particular topic, there is genetic mechanisms of micro and macro evolution. There is elucidation on how Darwin and post-Darwin theories resulted in development of synthetic theory of evolution. Implications of mutation in evolution, that the evolution related questions you will find a lot, but synthetic theory you can see questions relevant to Darwin and post-Darwin explanation of evolution. What is synthetic theory of evolution? How this theory helps understand the evolutionary mechanism. It was in 1993. In 92, there was a question on synthetic theory of evolution directly. And apart from that, currently, if you see, you can see more of questions which are relevant to understanding of evolution in general, or comparative study of different theories of evolution. How Darwinism differs from synthetic theory and organic theory of synthetic theory of organic evolution, how Darwinism differs from it. This is another aspect of asking questions. So there are multiple ways in which a question can be asked, but for all of them you need to understand what synthetic theory of evolution is and what does it incorporate while explaining evolution. Before we proceed into this topic further and delve deeper, I would like to introduce all of you to our course, Anthropology optional course, which has been framed specifically keeping in mind the UPSC IAS aspirants. This particular course has all the topics of anthropology divided in form of micro topics with live classes and video courses available for all of them. Additionally, there's test series, daily answer writing practice, and a lot of material, study material, which involves ebooks and notes, study material, articles, research papers, which helps understand and enhance the understanding of the subject in general. Additionally, if you enroll in this course, you're going to be a part of a WhatsApp group, which will help you connect with the mentors easily, get your doubts cleared in a much faster and efficient manner. So you can check for this course via the link in the description below. You can visit the link directly after we are done with this video. Moving towards our topic, we are going to have a look at the major factors in detail. We have seen the 5 factors which are involved. Let's have a look at them individually. First is genetic variation. Now, what is genetic variation? Genetic variation is the raw material of evolution. So, because without this, there is a natural selection which is non-operable, because variation बहुत ज़रूरी है. As the name suggests, the variation in genes, if that does not happen, what selection will you do? What will you select if there is no option? And options are created from variation. So for us, genetic variation is the raw material. It is the raw material of evolution. What does it involve? It involves the differences in genetic makeup among individuals in a population. As I told you, if there's no difference, then how will you select? So gene variation holds a very, very important aspect. The forms in which this genetic variation can happen is via gene and chromosomal mutation that happens. There can be recombination, crossing over. जब meiosis होता है, when the cells, the genes are combining, at that time when the recombination of genes is happening, chromosomes is happening, at that time थोड़ा सा crossover हो सकता है, थोड़ा सा mismatch हो सकता है, and that leads to a new gene formation. Then there is gene flow, that is migration between populations. So there are three ways in which it might happen. There can be large scale changes also, like deletions, duplications, inversions. Those are all chromosomal mutations that happen. When from a chromosome there is certain thing which is deleted, certain thing which is inverted. Inversions are also a cause, where inversions are also a cause in which the chromosomal change can happen, but it has to be large scale, right? Either deletion or duplication or inversion, it has to be large scale, right? And when it comes to recombination, it can produce new alleles in gametes, it can increase the variability. Gene flow, when that happens, it prevents the speciation by homogenizing the gene pool. It increases the genetic diversity of the receiving population. And that is how, in total, all these three aspects can help bring gene variation, right? And this gene variation concept, it is essential for natural selection, because when this variation is happen, that is when the selection will happen, that is when the genes will be passed forward. If there's no change, what is being passed forward is the same thing. Now when we look at gene variation, the sources are mutation, genetic recombination, and gene flow. And the importance of this thing, the sources we have already discussed in detail, the mutations, recombination, and gene flow. Importance is that first, heritable, it can be passed from generation to generation. It causes difference in traits like the change in color of eyes, or maybe a size change in noses, or hearing changes, or any change, smallest and slightest change also, but it is the one which causes difference in traits. And basis these differences, we will get to know what is adapting better in that environment. क्योंकि adaptation तब होगा, if there is no variety, everyone is same, either everyone is surviving or no one is surviving, it's all or none. But if there's differences, we get to know what is suiting better, and that is what is passed from in the next generation, right? So if we look at the difference of, say, color of eyes, brown, green, and blue. Now if all the entire population has brown eyes, that is the only thing that will be passed down. And if that is the only thing that is passed down, we don't know if it is suiting the environment or not, because if anything happens, everyone is going to suffer same. But if there's difference in color, we will get the environment in general will get to know that okay, blue is suiting much better, so blue traits are going to be passed further and further. Why? Because it is adapting better, it is suitable for the environment better. So it's very, very important for adaptation that there is difference, and difference will come from this genetic variation, any of these concepts in general. Next is natural selection. Now, natural selection is the process by which individuals with advantageous traits are more likely to survive and reproduce. Because when there are changes, as I told you, जिसके ज़्यादा better traits हैं वो survive करेगा, and the one who survives is the one who is going to reproduce. So in this there are certain types like stabilizing selection, which favors average traits. There is directional selection, where one extreme is selected. There's disruptive selection, where both the extremes are selected but average out things are not selected. There's outcome, that is increases frequency of favorable alleles leading to adaptation. There are four types of selection that can happen in natural selection. Either only the average traits are more suitable, extremes are not suitable for that particular environment. But there's directional selection, where only one extreme trait, either extremely good or extremely bad of that you can say, is selected, or extreme hot or extreme cold is selected. some disruptive selection where both the extremes are selected, the average traits जो है, जो mediocre traits हैं, they are not selected, they don't get into it. And then there is outcome, which increases the frequency of favorable alleles. So whatever is favorable, whether it's disruptive, directional, or stabilizing, whatever extreme or trait is selected, that is the one which increases in frequency, and that leads to the adaptation in general. So in this, there's population of variation. There is selection pressure which arises. So there are, suppose, white and gray mice. Now, as per the environment, white mice are not able to survive. So the selection pressure is applied, and the gray mice are the one who are selected. So they are the evolved population now. White will not be seen. Why? Because it is not suitable. Now, in this, how do we understand the extremes and non-extremes? Now, this is a white mouse with white tail, gray mouse with white tail, right? Supposing only extremes, only one extreme is acceptable, and that is gray color. Otherwise, even if you have a white or pinkish tail, that is also not selected. Why? Because it does not suit the environment for X amount of reasons. So the trait that is passed is the extreme thing, that is only gray. There is no pink tail which is there. Why? Because it does not suit the selection environment. So average out, this can be considered as average. Average is not selected. What selects is the extreme. The extreme is single color. Singular color is the one which is able to survive in the environment. So that is what the population will become. If supposing white was the only one which was surviving, gray was not, so the mice will become completely gray. If only two extremes are possible, that okay, white mouse with white tail, gray mouse with gray tail, but white with gray tail or gray with white tail is not surviving, then only these two extremes will pass, but the mixture of the two will not be existing. Right? So there are various combinations in which genes can be passed, and from those genes there is selection that happens which is going to survive better. Maybe it is because of camouflage thing, maybe it is because they are difficult to hunt and therefore they are able to survive. Maybe the environment impacts the white mice in a wrong way. It causes diseases much easily compared to gray mice. That can also be a reason. Whatever is the reason, but there is extreme selection, then extreme. If there is a requirement of the crossover of two, crossover will be passed. It can be either ways, but there can be multiple combinations that happen. Out of that, the nature will select which of them suits the environment better and is going to become the evolved population. Then we have genetic drift, the random fluctuation in allele frequencies, especially in small population like bottleneck effect. The drastic reduction in population size, that is called as bottleneck effect. जैसे bottle का neck होता है, there's huge amount of population, but it drastically reduces in size for X amount of reason. There is not going to be a specific reason for which this genetic drift in general is going to happen, this selection is going to happen. There's not going to be a specific reason for it, but it is going to happen, right? That is more important. So there is something called as bottleneck effect, just like the neck of a bottle, exactly like a neck of a bottle. Certain species reduce in number because of that. It is completely random change in gene variations. So this can happen in form of, bottleneck effect can maybe in form of natural disaster. You can say that, okay, maybe a flood came and the number of population decreased. That can also be a reason. It doesn't have to be something very specific. It can be a general thing also, but the population number will decrease. So surviving population will have different allele frequencies. comparatively. There's founder effect, where new population started by a few individuals. So when a group splits off, they start a new population. Their gene pool may not represent the original population. There might be certain changes in the genes that are going to start because of the split that has happened. They're going to start a new thing and they're going to survive on those new things. So that is founder effect. That is, जैसे founder एक company को शुरू करता है. So they split from a bigger company, they start their own company. So they'll start their own new policies, right? Supposing someone who's working in a X company, a very big company, they want to start their own company. They start a new company. They will bring some things maybe from their old company, some policies from their old company, but they are going to have certain new policies also. They are going to build better relations. Maybe new people are going to be joining in. New policies are going to be a part of it, right? So it is like exactly like that. So a population splits, certain people move to a new location and they build something different. So that is the founder effect. And then impact, it can lead to loss of genetic diversity and fixation of alleles, right? So over time, genetic drift, it can lead to a fixation, that is 100% frequency, or a loss of genes, that is 0% of the frequency of that particular allele. So one or another trait, it can either be completely like the entire population has that gene, or nobody has that gene. That is the impact. So genetic variation, we have already seen. We have seen about various pointers related to genetic variation. We have seen about mutation and we have seen about genetic drift. Now we come to gene flow. The movement of genes between populations due to migration and interbreeding. That is gene flow. The flow of genes or the movement of genes between populations. It can be when people are migrating. It can be when people are interbreeding. Either way, from one population to another, the movement of genes or alleles is going to happen. And it is a key mechanism of evolution and it impacts the genetic diversity. Its function is that it introduces new alleles in a population, it increases the genetic variation, and it reduces the genetic difference between populations in general. When individuals or maybe traits, they are moving from one population to another and they breed, it can happen within a population, it can happen between populations, but it is going to definitely lead to new changes. It can be beneficial also, it can be neutral also, it may even be harmful. It is not that always it is going to be beneficial, but it is going to bring a certain change is what is expected. So for example, when people from a different region have children together, their offsprings, they have genetic trait of both the populations. Someone who is from say equatorial region and they breed with someone who is from say a polar region, the cold countries. So the children, they're going to have genetic traits of both the population. Those traits might be beneficial for the child. Some of them, not all of them are going to be beneficial. Some might not be beneficial also, but they are going to be crossed over, right? They're going to have a mix of it. That is what gene flow is. So random fluctuation, there is no selection, there is nothing that can be done. No selection at all can happen in such a scenario. Like when a child is born, you cannot choose whether the child will have the tolerance to cold environment or tolerance to hot environment. Maybe the child doesn't have tolerance to warmer environment and to cold environment, it just wants an average temperature. That is also possible, right? So there is no criteria by which this selection is going to happen. It is going to happen in general in a random manner. But new alleles definitely are going to be introduced. Then the last one we have is isolation mechanism. Now, isolation mechanism is a barrier that prevents gene flow between populations. It isolates them. As the name suggests, it isolates them. It is a barrier that prevents gene flow between populations. It can be of multiple forms because isolation can happen in multiple ways, like geographical isolation. Maybe by the species are divided by sea or ocean or mountains. It can happen in that way. So this mechanism is crucial for the process of speciation, definitely, because it prevents different species or populations from interbreeding. Right? So there can be any form of geographic isolation or separation which stops from them interbreeding. So there is no gene flow between the two of them. They're going to remain separate things. Reproductive isolation, it may be behavioral. The species behaviors are different. The mechanical differences are there. There's temporal differences. Any form of difference can be there. Different mating behaviors maybe. So that leads to birds, different species of birds having different songs or different dances. That is behavioral impact. Different behaviors that does not let them interbreed. There can be temporal isolation where species reproduce at different times of season. So someone so there can be frogs that breed in spring and some that breed in summer. So they cannot interbreed because the breeding seasons in itself is completely different, right? And then there can be definitely mechanical isolation, that is physical difference in reproductive organs. So maybe it is usually, you can see in plants where there's completely different shape of a flower, so it will not help, it is not going to let pollinate because it is completely different. It is going to be different form, different way. So any mechanical difference, any temporal difference, any behavioral difference, any geographic isolation, these all are barriers that prevent the flow of gene or interbreeding in general. So they prevent mating or fertilization from happening. It promotes speciation by preventing the interbreeding happening at all at any cost. So they maintain the species boundaries, that okay, this cannot be crossed, this has to be different. So they drive evolution and biodiversity by allowing populations to be different, to be genetically different, and not letting everything be crossed. क्योंकि बैरियर होना चाहिए कि ठीक है, दिस इज नॉट द राइट जीन फ्लो दैट कैन हैपन, दिस इज नॉट द काइंड ऑफ इंटरब्रीडिंग दैट कैन बी अलाउड इन दिस एनवायरमेंट ऑन अर्थ. सो एक डिफरेंस, एक बैरियर होना जरूरी है, एंड दिस इज व्हाट द बैरियर्स आर. द आइसोलेशन मैकेनिज्म्स आर द ones which prevent wrongful gene mutations and mergers happening, because without them gene flow would blur the distinction of species. If there's no barrier, everybody is going to interbreed and there's going to be a whole lot of mess. So to prevent that mess, isolation mechanisms stand tall and are very, very important. Now with this, we wind up the segment of today. I hope this segment, this particular video has been very helpful to all of you. For any queries regarding to our course of anthropology, you can connect with us on WhatsApp. You can present all your queries there. Additionally, you can connect with us on Instagram or Telegram. We'll be seeing you in the upcoming video. Till then, have a good day, all of you.